What's a secret you won't share with anyone in person, but you are willing to share anonymously? Story 1. The darkness of my past haunts me like a relentless shadow. I broke up with my ex-boyfriend after discovering his infidelity, but what followed was far worse than any betrayal. He and his best friend, fueled by a toxic mixture of desperation and rage, broke into my apartment one night. They lay in wait, like predators stalking their prey, until I returned home from an evening out. What began as his twisted attempt to talk some sense into me and reclaim what he believed was as quickly descended into a nightmare beyond imagination. For 18 excruciating hours, they held me captive, transforming my sanctuary into a prison of terror. The physical pain of their assaults paled in comparison to the psychological trauma that would forever alter my life. Their threats, whispered with chilling conviction, became the chains that sealed my silence. My family, blissfully ignorant of the horror I endured, never understood why I ended things. To my ongoing torment, they continued inviting him to family functions, unknowingly forcing me to face my tormentor during what should have been joyous celebrations. Despite my desperate pleas, their invitations persisted, each one a fresh wound in my healing heart. Eventually, I made the heart-wrenching decision to distance myself from them, though they remained clueless about the real reason. The ache of missing my precious nephews and nieces gnaws at my soul daily, but the terror of potentially encountering him outweighs even that profound loss. After all this time, I doubt they would believe my story even if I found the courage to tell it. The pain of that night and the subsequent loss of my family continues to eat away at me like a cancer that refuses to die. Story 2. On what should have been a celebration of a decade of love and commitment, our 10-year wedding anniversary, my world imploded with a discovery that would forever change our lives. I found that my wife had been engaging in an intimate online relationship with someone for about 6 weeks, a man I vaguely knew through our World of Warcraft guild. The night before, when I returned from work, she was sharing his jokes with an enthusiasm that felt foreign, her laughter carrying a forced note that set off warning bells in my mind. Later, as we sat together on the couch watching TV, an inexplicable urge led me to check her Discord account. The first message I saw pierced my heart like a poisoned arrow. I'd send you pictures, but I'm being supervised. My mind went blank, the world spinning around me as I mumbled an excuse and retreated to our bedroom, unable to process the betrayal unfolding before my eyes. The next morning, driven by a desperate need for truth, I found a script to download their chat history. What I discovered shattered my world into a million pieces. I'm so angry at husband when he's not with me, but I'm fine when he's here, she had written, each word a dagger in my chest. My heart crumbled further when I saw those 3 devastating words. I love you. The final blow came when I read. I thought being intimate with husband a bunch would cure my feelings, but it hasn't. I hadn't shed tears in years, the last time lost in the fog of memory. But reading those logs broke my emotional dam 3 times over. It was like watching our marriage disintegrate in real time. A heart-wrenching journey through sadness, despair, and anger as I witnessed their relationship unfold. They argued, reconciled, and argued again, their digital dance of betrayal playing out before my eyes. At one point, she confessed she didn't know why she was doing this, that she truly loved me, but he was like her kryptonite. She felt powerless to resist. By now, their relationship seemed to have run its course, reduced to a mechanical exchange of pictures, presumably through Snapchat, though I couldn't prove it. When I finally confronted her, my voice trembling with emotion, I simply said, "Happy anniversary. Do we have another year?" Then I revealed my discovery of the logs. She fumbled through explanations, claiming she didn't really cheat, promising to block him on everything immediately. But the damage was done. For almost a week, I moved through life like a ghost, barely present in my own body. Now, 6 weeks later, we appear to be fine on the surface, but the trust lies shattered beneath our careful facade. I find myself fighting the urge to check her accounts whenever she leaves her phone unattended or her computer unlocked. Most days I manage, but sometimes a random trigger, like seeing this post, sends me spiraling back into that dark place of depression and doubt. I haven't shared this with anyone because, despite everything, I still love her and can't bear the thought of my family and friends turning against her. I do plan to discuss this with a professional when my finances allow, but for now, I'm okay. I'm calm, I'm content, and I'm moving forward with my life. I feel compelled to explain that her anger stemmed from feeling I wasn't doing enough around the house. A conversation we had while she was already involved with him. Though I believed I was contributing plenty, she didn't see it that way. Taking her complaint to heart, I began documenting every household task I completed in a daily journal. Picking up trash, cleaning messes, caring for our little one, collecting her discarded coffee mugs and Splenda packets. I continue this practice, finding it helps me track my contributions and proves they add up to something substantial. There's a bitter satisfaction in seeing the pages fill from margin to margin with evidence of my dedication to our home. Story 3. In the shadows of my earliest memories lies a tragedy that forever shaped my life. My mother and her boyfriend subjected me and my two younger siblings to unspeakable abuse when we were barely more than infants. Being the eldest at just 5 years old, I sensed something was terribly wrong around the time of my brother's first birthday, though my young mind couldn't comprehend the true horror of our situation. In my childish innocence, I believed abuse was simply a normal part of life. Days after my brother's birthday, my mother told me he was sick and needed hospital care. I bid him farewell without understanding the gravity of the moment as my mother dropped me off at my aunt's house en route to the hospital. At my aunt's, I spent what seemed like a normal evening, taking a bath and playing with my cousins until darkness fell. Then came the moment that would divide my life into before and after. A knock at the door shattered the evening's peace. My heart lifted, expecting to see my mother and baby brother, relief washing over me at the thought that everything was okay. Instead, when my aunt opened the door, her immediate breakdown told a different story. 2 towering police officers stood there, their presence both authoritative and gentle as they lifted me up, explaining I had to leave. I remember my desperate screams, reaching for my aunt as they carried me away, not even allowing a proper goodbye. In my confusion, I actually believed they might be taking me to my mother. That night, I stayed at a place whose details have mercifully faded from memory, where kind strangers fed and cared for me. The next morning brought another change as they transferred me to a foster home, a large, unknown family that terrified my young soul. Weeks passed there before another move brought me to a familiar face, my grandparents and sister. But my brother's absence loomed large, worry gnawing at my heart that he might still be sick. The relief of seeing my grandparents and learning they would take me home was quickly overshadowed by the devastating truth they had to share. They explained, as gently as possible, about the abuse and neglect we had suffered, and how it had been too much for my baby brother's fragile body to endure. He wasn't sick, he was dying. My mother and her boyfriend faced charges for abusing us and causing his death. As a child, I couldn't fully grasp the magnitude of what had happened. But as the years passed, guilt began to consume me, an irrational but overwhelming sense that I should have somehow prevented it, even though I was just a small child myself. Every year on his birthday, I make a pilgrimage to his grave, bringing yellow flowers because my aunt once mentioned he loved that color. Sometimes I leave a small toy, something I imagine he might have enjoyed playing with had he lived. In my quietest moments, I wonder if he's watching over me from wherever he is, if he knows about my yearly visits. Does he understand the depth of love and regret I carry? Does he know that his big sister, who couldn't protect him then, still tries to honor his memory now? These questions haunt me, but they also keep his memory alive in my heart. Story 4. My wife's betrayal with a professional soccer player has left wounds that refuse to heal. Though she insists their relationship never crossed physical boundaries, the shadow of doubt darkens my every thought. I discovered the truth not from her confession, but through her phone, a modern-day Pandora's box that revealed the extent of her emotional infidelity. Before the discovery, our marriage had been showing cracks. Arguments became our daily bread, and the distance between us grew like an invisible wall. One night, overwhelmed by the growing chasm between us, I confronted her about the state of our relationship. Her response, that she wasn't sure if she loved me anymore, should have prepared me for what I would find 2 weeks later. But nothing could have softened that blow. The evidence was devastating. Inappropriate pictures sent to him, intimate conversations about potential meetings, and most crushing of all, the cruel words she had written about me, her husband of 14 years. Suddenly, her emotional detachment made perfect sense. Her heart had found another harbor while I remained oblivious, still trying to navigate our stormy waters alone. We have 3 beautiful children, a son and 2 daughters aged 10, 9, and 7. Their innocence and pure love make my wife's actions even more incomprehensible. How could she risk destroying the family we've built over 20 years together, 14 of those as husband and wife? I find myself lost in memories of happier times, when her love for me was undeniable and our joy seemed unshakable. Life has thrown its challenges at us, but no more than most couples face, or so I thought. The depth of my love for her remains unchanged, which makes this betrayal cut even deeper. She's an extraordinary mother, and in my eyes, she still radiates the same beauty that first captured my heart. Her bubbly personality continues to charm everyone she meets. I used to feel such pride introducing her as my wife. Now that pride is tainted with pain. 7 or 8 months have passed since the discovery, yet she shows no genuine remorse or affection. The loneliness consumes me, along with a cocktail of sadness, fear, and shame that I can barely contain. In my darkest moments, I've contemplated ending my life, thinking it might bring her the freedom she seems to desire. But I could never inflict such pain on our children. Their confusion and hurt would be unbearable. Instead, I find myself praying for some fatal disease or accident to provide a less traumatic exit. We've been attending counseling, and she ended her relationship with him the day after I confronted her. She claims she loves me, but admits she's not in love with me romantically anymore. Words that echo through my mind during sleepless nights. Her actions speak even louder than her words, showing little interest in rebuilding what we've lost. I've kept this secret locked away, sharing it only with our counselor. My brothers and close friends keep asking what's wrong, noticing the change in me, but I can't bring myself to tarnish their image of her. Even now, after everything, I find myself protecting the woman who shattered my heart. Story 5. A childhood memory haunts me, its significance only fully understood 2 decades later. When I was just 3 or 4 years old, I had a playmate who would regularly visit our home. She always insisted on playing in the doghouse in our backyard, but her games weren't the innocent play of children. She would try to initiate what she called a game her daddy played with her. A game that no child should ever know about, involving touches that should never be part of a child's world. My mother, blessed with maternal instinct, found it peculiar that this little girl always wanted to play in the doghouse. Acting on her suspicions, she quickly removed it from our yard. At the time, my young mind couldn't comprehend the true nature of these games or their implications. It took 20 years before the lightning bolt of realization struck, illuminating the dark truth of those childhood memories. That moment of clarity hit me with devastating force. This little girl, my playmate, had been a victim of sexual abuse by her own father. The weight of this knowledge sits heavy in my chest, made heavier by the fact that I can't even remember her name. I've never broached the subject with my mother, never asked if she remembers the little girl, never attempted to find out what became of her. The shame of my cowardice follows me like a shadow. I've never shared this story with anyone, the guilt of my silence a constant companion. Sometimes I wonder what became of that little girl, now a woman like myself. Did she find help? Did anyone else notice the signs? Did she escape her abuser? These questions haunt my quieter moments, reminding me of a child's innocence destroyed and another child's unwitting role as a witness to unspeakable evil. Story 6. The weight of my secret grows heavier with each passing day. I have stage 4 stomach cancer. The journey to this devastating diagnosis began innocuously enough. Over 2 months, I unexpectedly shed 30 pounds, dropping from 220 to 190. The concerned voices of friends and family finally pushed me to seek medical attention, but what followed was a frustrating maze of misdiagnoses. Initially, they labeled it gastritis. When the prescribed treatments failed to bring relief, the medical carousel began. Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, ulcerative colitis, each diagnosis proving as incorrect as the last. It wasn't until last Thursday, during an endoscopy, that the truth finally emerged in the form of a malignant tumor lurking in my stomach. The cancer has already spread to nearby lymph nodes, and tomorrow's appointment looms ominously. A check to see if other organs have been invaded. The symptoms read like a horror story. Persistent nausea, blood tainting both vomit and stool, an appetite that vanishes after just a few bites, and a relentless weight loss that has now dropped me to 175 pounds, a weight I haven't seen since middle school. Constant fatigue and abdominal discomfort have become my constant companions, yet I've managed to keep this brutal reality hidden from everyone in my life. My wife, children, parents, siblings, coworkers, and friends. After the earlier misdiagnosis of Crohn's and diverticulitis, I retreated into silence, unwilling to burden others with my condition or risk being treated differently. My desperate desire to remain useful, to avoid becoming a burden, has sealed my lips. This struggle feels particularly poignant given my history with bipolar disorder and suicidal thoughts. 12 years ago, I attempted to end my life, but was revived by emergency services. 3 years later, another attempt, another failure. Less than a year after that, I found myself hospitalized for yet another planned attempt. Self-loathing has been my lifelong companion, thoughts of ending it all my frequent visitors. As an atheist, I've never feared the torment of an afterlife, but this diagnosis makes me wish I believed in something greater. Now, facing a death I didn't choose but can't escape, I find a bitter irony in the situation. At least this way, I won't have to inflict the additional grief of suicide on my family. Cancer will do what I couldn't bring myself to finish. Story 7. Living with 2 grandmothers, and my mother turned a simple purchase into an elaborate covert operation. I own a 5-foot-tall doll, an innocent enough possession, perhaps, but one that required mission impossible levels of stealth to acquire and maintain. The saga began with the delivery, an 80-pound box that somehow needed to make its way into my room without alerting any of my 3 vigilant housemates. Like a seasoned spy, I stationed myself outside, anxiously awaiting the UPS delivery, determined to intercept it before any telltale doorbell could betray my secret. When the moment finally arrived, I faced my first major challenge, maneuvering this unwieldy package through the front door, down the hallway, and into my room, all while maintaining absolute silence and avoiding detection. Through some miracle of stealth and timing, I managed to complete this phase of the operation successfully. But owning such a unique item brought its own set of challenges. After a week of possession, I discovered that keeping it clean while sharing living space with 3 other people required strategic planning worthy of a military operation. The bathroom became my covert cleaning facility, but timing these maintenance sessions proved increasingly complex. One particularly nerve-wracking incident stands out in my memory. I had the doll positioned in the bathtub for cleaning when I decided to take a shower, hoping to maintain the illusion of normal bathroom activities. Upon finishing, I opened the door to find my grandmother waiting to use the facilities. My heart nearly stopped as I silently prayed she wouldn't pull back the shower curtain during her visit. Fortune smiled upon me that day, and my secret remained safe. The stakes rose even higher when family circumstances forced me to temporarily share my room with my brother and his girlfriend. In a feat of desperate ingenuity, I managed to conceal the doll in a suitably sized box within my closet. To this day, my 5-foot secret remains just that, a secret, and I intend to keep it that way. Story 8. My fiancée is my sanctuary in a world that increasingly feels like a crowded desert. She's the only person whose presence truly brings me peace, whose company I genuinely cherish. I keep this truth locked away, knowing that voicing it would not only burden her with impossible expectations, but also expose the extent of my social withdrawal. I wasn't always this way. The transformation began 6 or 7 years ago, following a dark period of depression and substance addiction. Though I've been clean and happy for several years now, the person who emerged from that chrysalis of recovery bears little resemblance to my former self. Social interactions have become elaborate performances where I'm constantly watching the clock, calculating how long I must endure before I can make a graceful exit without appearing rude. Conversations feel like exercises in endurance, my mind perpetually preoccupied with thoughts of escape. When will they leave me alone? How soon can I go home? Yet I've become remarkably adept at masking these feelings, so much so that several people consider me their friend, unaware that I derive no genuine pleasure from our interactions. But with my fiancée, everything changes. She creates a space where I feel completely safe, where the mask can fall away. My love for her flows naturally, effortlessly, in a way I can't explain. This unique connection terrifies me. The thought of losing her carries the weight of knowing I might never find another person I could love with such depth and authenticity. During a brief separation in our relationship, I attempted to date other women. Some were objectively beautiful, kind, and engaging, but I found myself going through the motions, unable to forge any meaningful connection. Second dates became impossible hurdles, my heart refusing to open to anyone else. I wish I could change this aspect of myself, reshape my emotional landscape to be more inclusive, more normal. But I remain trapped in this paradox, surrounded by people yet profoundly alone, except for the one person who somehow breached these walls I never consciously built. Story 9. Though I'm late to share this tale, it's a burden I've carried alone for decades. The year was 1980, and I was a chubby white nerd navigating the treacherous waters of 5th grade. My tormentor was a 6th grade Arab student who, along with his friends, had turned bullying me into their favorite pastime. Most days brought the usual torments, shoving, name-calling, relentless heckling, but sometimes their cruelty reached new depths of malice. One particularly horrific incident occurred when I was feeling ill in the school bathroom. The ringleader, spotting me enter, followed me in, and, upon finding me hunched over the toilet being sick, forced my face into my own vomit. Another time, they smashed a paper bag filled with dog excrement against my head, their laughter echoing in my ears as I stood there, humiliated and defiled. Every day after school, they would follow me home, their taunts and jeers my unwanted escort since they lived just a block past my house. At the end of each torturous walk, their leader would grab me, his threat always the same. "You better not tell anyone, right?" If I hesitated, he'd tighten his grip, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "If you tell anyone, I'll kill you." The conviction in his eyes made me believe every word. During this time, my uncle, a long-haul trucker, came to visit. He had a tiny Pomeranian named Brutus, a name that belied the dog's diminutive size. One evening, he shared a story about 2 men who attempted to rob him at a truck stop. He defended himself with a tire thumper, a heavy wooden stick used for checking truck tires, successfully knocking one assailant unconscious. His tale planted a seed in my mind. Desperate for protection against my bully, I asked if he had another tire thumper, fabricating a story about needing it for defense against an aggressive neighborhood dog. He gave me one, and I began carrying it in my backpack's umbrella sleeve, though fear kept me from using it. They always outnumbered me 3 or 4 to 1. Then came the day that changed everything. I stayed after school for a project, believing I was safe since they'd left an hour earlier. But on my way home, I spotted the leader following me. For once, he was alone. As we walked through a wooded shortcut known as the trails, he began his usual taunting. Then he pulled out a pocket knife, his words chilling. "Time to get a little piggy." When he charged at me, blind panic took over. I swung the tire thumper without thinking, the crack of impact followed by his scream as he fell. I raised the weapon again, ready to strike, but he begged me to stop. For a moment, my rage subsided. Then he hurled another insult, and something in me snapped. I brought the thumper down on his thigh with all my strength, producing another sickening crack and scream. Suddenly, a voice called out from the street. "You okay in there?" Panic seized me. I covered his mouth, whispering his own threat back to him. "If you tell anyone, I'll kill you with your own knife." The fear in his eyes told me he believed me just as I had once believed him. I took his knife, ran home, and hid it in my grandfather's attic. He missed a week of school. When he returned, he wore casts on both his arm and leg, telling everyone he'd fallen off a bike ramp. After that, he and his friends gave me a wide berth. I've tracked his life through occasional Google searches over the years. He was arrested in the late 90s for domestic violence and animal abuse, but appears to have turned his life around since then. He owns a business now, is married with children, and his wife seems like someone who wouldn't tolerate his past behavior. This remains the only time I've ever deliberately caused someone physical harm. I've never shared this story, not with my wife, not with my best friends, no one. The guilt still gnaws at me, though I justify it as self-defense against years of torment. It's a weight I'll carry to my grave. Story 10. I live a life of profound contradiction. As a leader in my church, a position I hold voluntarily, I've taught Sunday school and still serve as a substitute teacher when needed. My academic background includes time at a Christian college, where I even minored in New Testament Greek. I married a Christian woman, and together we're raising our children in the faith. But beneath this carefully constructed facade lies a truth that would shatter the world of those I hold dear. I no longer believe in God. The loss of faith wasn't sudden. It crept in gradually, like shadows lengthening at dusk. Try as I might to maintain my beliefs, the foundations of faith have crumbled beneath the weight of reason and doubt. Yet I continue this elaborate performance, maintaining the illusion of devotion because I understand the devastating impact my truth would have on those I love. The experience feels like mourning the death of an intimate friend, one who had been my constant companion for 34 years, who knew my deepest thoughts and was always there in times of need. But this is a grief I must bear in silence, for my family and friends still believe wholeheartedly in this friend I've lost. To them, an admission of my unbelief would feel like losing me, and I cannot bring myself to inflict that pain. So I carry on with this sacred masquerade, leading prayers I no longer believe in, teaching lessons whose truth I question, and maintaining a facade of faith that grows heavier with each passing day. The irony of using my knowledge of New Testament Greek, once a tool to deepen my faith, to maintain this pretense isn't lost on me. In the end, my greatest act of Christian charity may be protecting those I love from the truth of my spiritual death. Story 11. My 21st birthday celebration spiraled into an unexpected workplace nightmare. Like most newly minted adults, I celebrated my milestone birthday with perhaps too much enthusiasm, resulting in a morning-after headache that threatened to split my skull in two. Dragging myself to work, I endured several hours of throbbing agony before reaching my breaking point. In desperation, I approached a coworker, asking if they had any ibuprofen to spare. She handed me 3 pills with an assurance they would help with the migraine. Without a second thought, a decision I would soon regret, I swallowed all 3. At first, nothing seemed amiss, though I noticed my headache beginning to fade. Then, something strange started happening. A creeping realization dawned on me that I shouldn't have taken all 3 pills at once, but at least the skull-crushing pain had subsided. Within 20 minutes, however, I found myself floating in an oddly euphoric state, my mind drifting like an untethered balloon. Focus became impossible. Even reading simple text seemed beyond my capabilities. The situation took a dramatic turn for the worse when, by some cosmic joke of timing, I was randomly selected for a drug test. Though nothing showed up in the results, my obviously altered state earned me a week and a half suspension from work, my supervisor's suspicions unmoved by my protests of innocence. These past few days have been a blur of anxiety and regret, my career momentarily derailed by a simple request for headache relief. The irony of failing to question the nature of the pills, especially given my professional environment, isn't lost on me. Sometimes the most painful lessons come wrapped in the promise of pain relief. Story 12. This confession brings a flush of embarrassment to my cheeks, though my wife already knows and finds it amusing. A few years ago, we moved in with her parents to save money, a practical decision that led to an absurd morning ritual. The challenge of sharing living space with in-laws manifested itself in unexpected ways, particularly in matters of personal necessity. One morning, I awoke to an urgent biological need, only to hear my father-in-law's morning routine already in progress. Panic seized me. The thought of using their bathroom for such a purpose so early in our stay filled me with mortification. In a moment of desperate inspiration, or perhaps desperation-induced madness, I grabbed the small trash bin from the corner of our room, conveniently lined with a bag, and addressed my pressing need in this makeshift facility. The deed itself, however, proved to be merely the beginning of my predicament. After cleaning up and securing the bag, I found myself facing a new challenge: disposal of the evidence. There I stood, getting ready for work, with a bag of indignity sitting accusingly at my feet. The solution, in my anxiety-addled mind, was to take it with me and find a public trash bin on my way to work. And so began the most uncomfortable 15-minute walk of my life, the incriminating package tucked away in my hoodie pocket. My steps quickened by both embarrassment and urgency until I finally found appropriate disposal. This tale of bathroom anxiety and improvised solutions remains a source of both amusement and mild shame, a reminder that sometimes the fear of social awkwardness can lead us to even more awkward solutions. Story 13. At 14, I was the epitome of adolescent awkwardness, a nerdy, introverted kid in a small town where such traits were social currency of the lowest value. My romantic resume was blank. No kisses, no girlfriend, just a persistent sense of isolation that colored my days. Then came my older brother's wedding reception, an event that promised to be just another exercise in social discomfort. The evening took an unexpected turn when, after I'd had a few illicit sips of liquid courage, someone whispered the magic words. One of the bridesmaids' little sisters, a girl my age, thought I was cute. My heart, so accustomed to beating in solitude, suddenly found a new rhythm. I sought her out, and to my amazement, we clicked. She was everything I'd dreamed of: cute, funny, and genuinely nice. For the first time in my young life, I felt the intoxicating possibility of a turning point, a moment when my story might shift from lonely outsider to something more. We wandered off together, holding hands in that tentative way of young teenagers discovering the electric thrill of first attraction. Finding an empty room, we talked more, each word building a bridge between our nervous souls. Finally, summoning every ounce of courage I possessed, I leaned in for what would be my first kiss. The moment of anticipated romance, however, transformed instantly into a scene of spectacular mortification. Instead of the magical first kiss I'd imagined, she suddenly turned away and vomited directly into my mouth. The taste of rejection, it turns out, has a very literal flavor. She fled the room, leaving me alone with the physical and emotional aftermath of a romantic encounter gone horrifically wrong. This moment, both tragic and comedic, became a perfect metaphor for my early romantic endeavors, full of hope and anticipation, only to end in unexpected and messy ways. Yet somehow, the memory now brings more laughter than embarrassment, a reminder that even our most mortifying moments can become stories worth telling. Story 14. I work in the mental health field, and by all professional measures, I excel at what I do. My ability to connect with clients runs deep, and many approach me at the end of their stay to express how profoundly I've impacted their lives. This success in helping others heal their psychological wounds brings me genuine pride and satisfaction. Yet behind this professional facade lies a bitter irony. When I step outside the facility's doors, I enter a world of complete solitude. My personal life is an empty stage. No friends to share stories with, sporadic contact with family at best, and a paycheck that barely covers the necessities. Despite maintaining good physical health and possessing what society deems conventional attractiveness, I haven't experienced intimate connection in years. My relationship with romance has become particularly complex. Deep-seated trust issues with women, born from past experiences, have created barriers that seem insurmountable. The ability to express romantic intimacy, not physically, but emotionally, feels like a language I've forgotten how to speak. The irony doesn't escape me. I help others navigate their emotional landscapes while my own remains a barren wilderness. I suspect I'm actually in a darker place, mentally speaking, than many of the individuals I counsel. Yet years of professional practice have honed my ability to mask this reality, to present a facade of stability and wellness that belies the emptiness within. I've become an expert at helping others find their way out of the very darkness I call home. Story 15. To the outside world, I present an image of someone who has their life perfectly arranged, all the pieces fitting together in a seamless display of success and stability. But beneath this carefully crafted exterior lies a truth that would shatter this illusion. My life is a masterfully constructed house of cards, built on a foundation of manipulation and deceit. Years of a troubled childhood have shaped me into someone dangerously skilled at manipulation, capable of bending situations and people to my will through carefully calculated lies. I've developed an uncanny ability to control my emotional displays, adapting my persona to whatever best serves my immediate needs. Like a skilled predator, I've learned to exploit others' emotions, using their vulnerabilities to achieve my goals. The web of deception has grown so intricate over the past decade that I can no longer extricate truth from fiction without unraveling the entire tapestry of lies I've woven. Even in trivial matters, I find myself fabricating stories simply to test the boundaries of what I can make others believe. Until recently, this behavior operated largely below my conscious awareness. Now that I've become aware of these patterns, I find myself not worried, which should worry me, but rather fascinated. The potential impact on future relationships or children crosses my mind, but more as an intellectual exercise than an emotional concern. I'm fairly certain I exhibit sociopathic, if not psychopathic tendencies, and the negative stigma attached to these labels keeps me awake at night, not out of shame or fear, but from concern about discovery. The most disturbing aspect of this self-awareness is how little it troubles me, even though I know it should. Instead, I find myself reveling in the thrill of maintaining this elaborate deception, even while recognizing its ultimately destructive nature. Thank heaven for the shield of anonymity. These are words I could never voice in person, not because they shame me, but because they would shatter the perfect illusion I've worked so hard to create. Story 16. This tale of childhood trauma and its lasting impact brings a slight flush of embarrassment to my cheeks, though I've largely made peace with its peculiar aftermath. When I was 4 or 5 years old, my mother brought me a cherished Peter Pan t-shirt from Disneyland. The shirt was slightly oversized, a common practice for growing children, and it quickly became my favorite piece of clothing. One fateful day, while attending to nature's call, disaster struck. I accidentally soiled the bottom back of my beloved shirt. Upon discovering this unfortunate incident, my mother made the reasonable but heartbreaking decision to dispose of the contaminated garment. Though I understood the necessity, the loss of my favorite shirt left an indelible mark on my young psyche. From that day forward, I developed what can only be described as an unusual bathroom ritual. I began removing every single article of clothing before using the facilities, driven by an overwhelming fear of repeating the tragic fate of my Peter Pan shirt. This peculiar habit persisted unnoticed until a mortifying incident at a local mall when I was 10. My father, discovering my neatly folded pile of clothes on the bathroom stall floor, was understandably bewildered by this unexpected sight. Now, at 23, this deeply ingrained habit remains firmly intact, though I've developed a more sophisticated approach for public situations. At home, I still strip completely naked for bathroom visits, finding comfort in this familiar routine. In public restrooms, I've perfected a careful system. My shirt remains partially on, pulled almost completely off, but with the neck hole behind my neck and arms still through the sleeves, while one leg exits its pant leg completely, with the other pant leg carefully draped over my remaining clothed leg to avoid contact with the bathroom floor. This quirky adaptation to childhood trauma has become such an integral part of my daily routine that I doubt I'll ever change. It's a reminder that sometimes our most unusual habits stem from seemingly minor incidents in our formative years, shaping our behaviors in ways we never could have predicted. Story 17. I carry a truth I've never acknowledged aloud. I was sexually assaulted by a woman, but I've refused to name it as such, even to myself. At 21, I reconnected with a high school friend, and what began as casual catching up took an unexpected and dark turn. After our initial conversation, she made several advances which I politely but firmly declined. Later that night, she invited me over for drinks with another friend. In my naivete, I saw no reason for concern and accepted the invitation. As the evening progressed and alcohol flowed freely, her advances became more persistent. Each one met with my continued refusal. Then, in a moment that still haunts my memories, she stripped completely naked, grabbed me forcefully, and imposed herself upon me. I found myself frozen in a state of confused paralysis, my mind unable to process what was happening. Fear of upsetting her by pushing her away or verbalizing my refusal left me trapped in a nightmare of compliance, desperately willing it to end quickly. The walk home at 2 a.m., though less than half a mile, felt like an endless journey through a surreal landscape of shame and confusion. The next day brought a strange emptiness, a disconnection from what had occurred. I tried to rationalize it as just another night of drunken encounters, but something felt fundamentally wrong, a feeling I couldn't shake. The final twist of the knife came about a week later, when she posted on Facebook about how real men don't sleep with drunk women. The hypocrisy of her statement, given what she had done to me, was both infuriating and devastating. After that post, I blocked her on all social media platforms, attempting to erase her from my digital life as I wished I could erase that night from my memory. The experience left me questioning societal assumptions about assault and gender, while struggling with my own inability to acknowledge what truly happened that night. Story 18. My fiancé works afternoon shifts while I maintain a regular day schedule, creating a temporal divide in our relationship that has led to an incident I never imagined I'd experience. Our mismatched schedules mean my evenings typically follow a simple routine. I return home, tend to our dog's needs, then retreat to my den for some solitary entertainment. I must confess that since our schedules diverged, I've been less than meticulous about maintaining my computer/Xbox room. While not quite a disaster zone, it's descended to what one might charitably call bachelor pad status. Scattered clothing and empty beer cans creating an atmosphere of casual disorder. This environmental decline has coincided with a noticeable cooling in our intimate life, an inevitable consequence of our rarely overlapping schedules. On this particular evening, following my usual routine of feeding and walking the dog, I settled into my basement sanctuary. Setting the mood with a mellow Spotify playlist, I opened an incognito browser and navigated to Pornhub, as many lonely individuals might do. The specific content I browsed isn't particularly relevant. Perhaps some MILF or interracial videos, maybe a Nuru massage. But what happened next would permanently alter my relationship with certain articles of clothing. After about an hour of strategic engagement, I decided it was time for the grand finale. Loading up what seemed like the perfect video, I glanced around for cleanup options. A black sock lying nearby seemed like the perfect solution, practical, well-fitting, and disposable. As I approached the moment of truth, I noticed an odd sensation, as if the material was shifting slightly. Focused on the task at hand, I dismissed this peculiar feeling. Post-completion, the satisfaction felt somewhat diminished, but I attributed this to the strange sensation I'd experienced. However, as I removed the sock, my world turned to horror. An earwig emerged from my most sensitive area, crawling down toward more vulnerable territory. Panic erupted as I flung the sock away, only to witness another earwig emerge from its depths. My reaction was primal, screaming and frantically slapping at myself, essentially punching my own groin in terror. After confirming no more insects remained on my person, I cautiously approached the discarded sock and turned it inside out. To my absolute horror, 4 more earwigs crawled within its folds. This experience has forever changed my relationship with socks, transforming them from innocent foot coverings to potential harbors for unwanted arthropod inhabitants. Story 910. I've never shared this with anyone. Not a single soul has heard this tale until now. A couple of months ago, my life took a dark turn at a local bar where I'd had far too much to drink. Being a lightweight, the alcohol hit me particularly hard, leaving me vulnerable to what would follow. 2 men struck up a conversation with me, and in my inebriated state, I engaged with them without hesitation. The next thing I knew, I was stumbling into a cab with them, heading to their place. Upon arrival, they led me to a bedroom, but my intoxication was so severe that I fell off the bed. They helped me back up, and then began removing my clothes. I lay there, too numb from alcohol to resist, my mind reduced to a single thought. Let's just get this over with. With an obedience born of alcohol and resignation, I positioned myself as directed, providing oral service to one man while the other approached from behind. When he suddenly attempted anal penetration, I cried out in pain and protest. To his credit, he apologized and left the room. The first man then repositioned me, continuing in a less invasive manner. Throughout it all, I remained silent and compliant, my mind floating somewhere above the scene. When he finished, he displayed an almost surreal courtesy, politely asking if I wanted water. I accepted, and after drinking it, fell into a troubled sleep. Hours later, I awoke to find, miraculously, all my belongings still intact, wallet, phone, everything exactly where I'd left them. I gathered my things and slipped out, making my way home in the early morning light. The physical aftermath made itself known when I tried to use the bathroom, pain and blood serving as stark reminders of the night's events. I allowed myself a brief cry before crawling into my own bed, my safe haven. Looking back, I believe that if I had firmly said no, they would have stopped. They seemed opportunistic rather than malicious. Surprisingly, I feel relatively normal now. I'm even looking forward to an upcoming date with a sweet man I've been talking to. No nightmares plague my sleep, no lingering trauma colors my days.